Hello and welcome to the live podcast Win More on Purpose. Today we have Nachum Kligman with us on Grow Like a Boss, how to effectively run and grow a business like a boss. The agenda, as always, is we're going to have more of a conversation. It's going to be all of us learning here together. If you have any questions, please write them down as we're going to have a Q&A at the end. And if you need to jump off early, there will be a recording. Everyone, just to start off, you can put into the chat, tell us where you're coming from, if there's anything specific you're focusing on in your business right now. For those who don't know me, my name is Yaakov Steinberg. I'm a sales coach. When I first went into the consulting space about 4+ years ago now, full-time, I noticed that people were able to build 6-7-figure businesses. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. And at some point, they'd hit a glass ceiling throughout that process. Sales many times is a dirty word for many people. It's associated with being a used car salesperson. Nobody really wants to come across that way. So they'd get stuck in how to grow their business. And that's where I came into the picture. Mindset, techniques, skills, tools, and really giving them the confidence and clarity in being able to speak to new people, follow up with potential clients, and really take their business to the next level. I've had the pleasure of dealing and working with quite a number of people that are pretty well known on LinkedIn, whether it's Chai Fishman, Hudi Blach, Hudi Greenberger, just to name a few. And people that have worked with me at the 6-7 level mark have been able to grow by even 50% in the first 60 days of working with me. Those at the 100K mark, give or take, have been able to grow by even 150% in the first 60 to 90 days. And solopreneurs have been able to grow by even 200, 240% in the first 45 days. With that, Nachum, I'd love to hand it over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and let's get the show on the road.
Well, Yaakov, first of all, thanks so much for having me on the show. It's great to be here. We've known each other for quite a few years by this time. I know, obviously, your in-laws for even longer.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely.
great to be here. So I'm one of these born entrepreneurs, shoveling snow when I was 10, selling baseball cards at trade shows when I was 12, having candy locker in high school at 15, which was forced to close down because I was making more money than the teachers. Uh, Several startups behind me. I wrote a book called The From Entrepreneur, published by Mosaica Press, which you can find on Amazon. And I just love entrepreneurship. I love the idea of taking an idea from the stage of an idea and bringing it to life and seeing other people do it. Although it does pain me when I see other people, when I see people trying to start a company, start a business, and the idea is not that great, and they'll pour, their life savings into it without thinking it through, without speaking to someone else. And that was one purpose of writing the book, in order to help guide them and guide people. And I was a business coach up until I launched my latest company, which is called Book Like a Boss. And I've been running this now with my partner, co-founder David Yudkowitz, for about 8 years now, and that's what I currently do full time, besides
Amazing.
learning.
Of course. Yeah, it's amazing. We've known each other for so many years, and one of the people I had on my list once I started a podcast was to have you on, because I remember way back in the day when you were helping people get their podcast started, and I'm really excited to have you here today as well. Um, One of the things I think that I would want to start with is, we named the podcast Grow Like a Boss. And I think one of the first things that we need to understand is, what does it even mean to be a boss? So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I mean, that's a great question. Can I answer it first with a story, and then
Of
maybe?
course.
Okay, so it's a little bit of an a little bit of an emotional story for me. But when I was younger, I was bullied by somebody in my community, and I was a very nice kid. Always, cared about other people and tried to take care of others. And but there's one bully always used to beat me up, and for years this was going on. And one time, I got beaten up. I guess I was probably about 10 years old, 11 years old, probably at 11. I remember I came into my house and I was crying, and my Bubby and Zadie were there, my father's parents, and they said, "What happened?" I said, "Oh, this guy was beating me up." And they said, "Well, what'd you do?" I said, "What do you mean? What did I do?" They said, "Well, what happened after he beat you up?" I said, "I came home crying." They said, "Why didn't you hit him back?" And then it hit me. Wait, I'm allowed to hit back, right? And it was such an eye opener for me, because I was like, wait a second, I'm allowed to defend myself. I'm allowed to stand up for myself. And sure enough, the next time this bully started attacking me, I pounded him. I started hitting him back, and I climbed on top of him, and I was beating him up. And I'll never forget this. I was sitting there and afterwards, and he said to me, "What took you so long?" And
Oh
what
boy.
happened was, yeah. And what happened was, but it sort of created a big change in me though, because I went from this nice, sweet kid to suddenly was like, wait a second, nobody can hurt me. I will defend myself. No one is in charge of me, and this is my life, and I'm going to be in charge. And this attitude has its ups and downs. First of all, I grew up very modern. Um, and so, when I was in school and high school especially, I wasn't the easiest of kids. Maybe even seventh, eighth grade, I wasn't the easiest of kids. I had ADHD before we had a name for it, and but I had this attitude that you can't harm me, you can't do anything to me, and I felt that I was on the same level as the teachers. I felt I was on the same level as my parents. I felt I was smarter than everybody. And and I felt that nobody could tell me what to do, and it got me into a lot of trouble. I mean, I was thrown out of three high schools, dropped out of high school, went to community college for a semester. Then I left there, and I ended up, Baruch Hashem, I went to Israel, ended up in a yeshiva called Nevet Zion in Telstone, and that absolutely changed my life and showed me that yes, you do have to answer to somebody. No, you can't be disrespectful to your parents, and you do have to respect your teachers. And so I started honing in on how to use this I don't know, this feeling of being a boss, of being in charge, of being in control, and realizing, hey, we're not always in control. You can't just do what you want or say what you want. You do have to answer to a Ribbonei Shalom, and you have to answer to your parents, and you have to be respectful. And there's laws around this. At the same time, because I had this attitude, I had no fear. Right? I had no fear of going and doing anything. Starting a business, is extremely not easy. Whether you're a freelancer or a business coach or a consultant like yourself, right? It's not easy to do it. It's not easy to, take that parachute and jump off that plane. And you have to go hang. You have to deal with the naysayers, and the naysayers not only outside your head, but those inside your head, telling you, who do you think that you are to do it? And I just had this attitude that I just didn't care and it doesn't matter. And so that enabled me to really go out and take risks, which it wasn't always the smartest thing. And, it always has its challenges, its ups and downs. But still, I had that attitude. And we were creating, to make a long story short, when we were creating Book Like a Boss, it came at a time period. I had a startup company, I had a few, but and the one before starting Book Like a Boss, we had taken millions of dollars in investments, and the company was, I owned the majority of the company. And then I made the mistake of taking VC money, venture capital money, and the venture capital was like in 2010 when the markets took a turn for the worse. They said, okay, we're going to give you like $500,000 to run out the year, but we're going to take 80% of the company in one shot for it.
Wow.
And that killed me. I said, I just worked, through blood and tears, taking an idea, building it up, getting millions of dollars invested, having, I think we had 11 employees at the time. And now just because now you're just going to, there's shift the market, instead of supporting me and building us, you're going to take advantage of it and take 80% of the company away from me in one shot. And it was either that or close down the company. So I didn't want my employees to get fired. And so I took the deal. I was left with less than like 4% of the company, and ended up leaving the company about 6 months later. So it was very painful because, when you start something and you put your life and blood into it, all the sacrifices that go into it, to have it taken away from you, I said, I'm not going to let that happen again. And, when building Book Like a Boss, myself and my partner, who was going through something similar, we said, we're going to be the bosses. We're going to make the decisions. We've turned down, more than $1 million from investors that wanted to have board seats or wanted to take some sort of control. And we said, we're not going to allow that to happen. We are going to be in charge of our destiny. We're going to make decisions. But being a boss. So going back to the question, I'm sorry for the tangent, but but this is what it means to anybody. What does it mean to be the boss? We have one life to live. And being the boss means that you're in control of your decisions. You're in control of who you want to work with, how you want to work, what ideas you want to pursue, who you take investments from or don't take investments from, right? Obviously, success comes exclusively from Hashem, right? But the shtadlus that we do, since the success comes from Hashem, we may as well do what we want to do the way we want to do it, and build things the way we want to do it. And so that's what being a boss means. It means taking control of your life, whether whether you're a husband or a wife, or whether you're a father or mother, or when it comes to your religious studies, or when it comes to running a company. Everything, you have to have the mindset of, you know what? There's only one person I need to. There's only one, not person, one thing I have to answer to as a Kadosh Baruch Hu. As long as I'm in line with Hashem, I'm in line with God, and I'm doing what Hashem wants me to do, then I don't have to take a seat back. I could take the risks. I could go out there, because there's no limit to what God can do. There's no limit to what Hashem can do. So why not? And I'll tell you a quick sales story. I mean, again, you can cut me off anytime if you want.
Oh, this is the amount that I'm learning in these stories is overwhelming. I mean, that's great.
So here's another story. When I was, I spent about 10 years in promotional marketing, selling tchotchkes and t-shirts and keychains and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for 10 years. I loved it because I was living by my parents. I'll go make a sale, make a couple of $1,000s, not work for a few weeks, hang out with friends. That this was a pattern I'd created. But when I got married, it was a little bit more like, I got to take it a little bit more seriously. It's got to be a steady income, and I got to pay my own bills. And I remember I was listening to a sales tape. I forgot who it was from, but he said something, you probably heard it yourself, Yaakov, and that is that, there's the same 8 hours in a day. So, and you're making the same phone calls. So why call a small business that's only doing $500,000 in sales when you could call a big business doing $20 million in sales, right? They're the same ones that they also have the needs for your product or service. The reason you're calling the cheaper guys is because you don't believe you can succeed. You don't believe that they are going to buy from you, and that prevents you from making those calls and following up. But if you're a boss, if you realize that there's no limit to what I could do, you could call the biggest companies in the world. And I did. I started doing that. I called Miramax Films, and I got a meeting with them. They didn't end up buying from me, but I had the courage to walk into their offices and to meet with somebody over there. And actually, on the way out from that meeting, when it went really bad, actually, not that it went bad. The guy didn't show up. He, I was living in Passaic, and I came to Manhattan. I had my suit dry cleaned, and put in my best effort. My best child had a box of Entenmann donuts, gave it to the secretary, right? And and then I said, hey, I have this meeting with Bob or whatever his name was. Says, oh, he's not here. I said, you sure? I have a meeting scheduled with him. He says, yeah, no, he's not here today. So I took my donuts back, and I left the office. And there was another business there called Taxi Cab Films that was right next to the Miramax offices. And I go into this office. I said, I'm here already. Maybe this is why, maybe God put me here for a reason. And I go into this office, and the office was beautiful. It was set like an old school taxi cab like office. Like it looked like a taxi cab setup. And I went in there, and there was a woman sitting at the desk. I said, yes, hi, my name is, Richard Kligman, whatever is my English name at the time. And, are you interested in any of these things? And she says, no, thank you. And I started walking out. All of a sudden, this older man in the back says, wait, come here. And so I walk in, and I come in, and he says to me, and he calls me into his office, and he says, so what's your name? What are you doing here? I said, so obviously he was a member of the tribe, saw me dressed in, my yarmulke and my tzitzis. And, we started bageling it, talking about Judaism, and he told me about his bar mitzvah, and, and it was a great relationship. He ended up buying tens of thousands of dollars worth of items from me over, a couple of years. And also he made an intro to me to this restaurant called Da Silvano in Manhattan. I wonder if it's still around. I did their 25th anniversary hats. It was like 2,500 hats at like $20 a piece. It was one of the biggest orders I ever had. And that came from that also. So that fear, not having that fear of going to Miramax, and then when you get rejected from Miramax, saying, you know what, I have no fear to go to the office next door, right? You put in your stylist, put in your effort, you don't know where the success is going to come from. So being the boss and having that attitude of boss, and we'll talk about it more throughout this conversation that we're having, when it comes to being a coach or a freelancer or a consultant or a solopreneur and everything else, right? Having that attitude and having that mind space of who you are and knowing who you are will have a tremendous effect on your business.
Yeah, and I think ultimately it's, it's fascinating. I mean, first of all, I'm sorry for the fact that you were bullied as a kid, but it's amazing how you were able to, eventually turn that into something so powerful that it became one of the main things that you talk about today, right? The idea of being able to take control of your life and as much as we can control it is extremely powerful, right? Rejecting the idea of, being scared of something because I'm not worthy of it or I'm not going to get it, and just instead being willing to take risks, obviously calculated risks, but risks in ways that are going to, I'm willing to take this chance and hope that it pans out. And just believing that you're in control is a huge difference between letting yourself be pulled along throughout the journey or choosing where you want to go. And I think that's extremely powerful. I definitely took some notes on that one. I think this goes straight into the next piece that I wanted to delve into, which is when it comes to being a boss, many times, especially as service providers, we have these relationships with clients, and many times we feel that they're the boss within the relationship. So, in reality, who is the boss within the relationship? And it sounds from what you're saying that ultimately, at the end of the day, we're the ones who are going to set the red lines. We're the ones who are in charge. Is that right?
Absolutely. And that's from, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of solopreneurs, of freelancers about this. People think that they have to work, that they're working when they get a client, that they now work for the clients. Who made the client believe that? Right? Who gave
Right.
that client that attitude to think that now he could text you at 10 o'clock at night and expect you to respond? Or that if he wants you to work late and miss dinner with your children, that he has the right to ask you to do that? No, you're the freelancer, you're the company, you're the business, right? So you have to set the tone, and you have to set the tone from the beginning, right? And
Right.
this pans itself out in many ways as a freelancer. For example, I know something that else we thought about talking about, like someone when you get paid. I've heard so many cases of people say having to collect money from the businesses that they're doing work with. They're so scared of getting paid that they won't take a deposit, or they'll waive the deposit, or they'll do net 30 and hope that it gets paid, and then they're calling, hey, well, how about my money? Because and it becomes such a nervous topic for it, where now you put the control of how you're getting paid into someone else's hands. Well, what if you got paid up front? No, they won't hire me. They won't hire. Great, go on to someone else that will. Right? What do you mean? If they won't hire, there are millions of people out there that get paid up front for what they do. You know why? Because my time is valuable. Because I'm
Right.
great at what I do. You want to work with me? Fantastic. I'm here. These are conditions. You don't want to work with me? Here's three other people that you could work with. I highly recommend. And I've done that even with my software company. If someone, taking care of our customers, but if there's a customer that's like really outrageous or asking for something that's unrealistic, I said, listen, if you want, here's three of my competitors. I'm more than, you could go to them. I could help you find a coupon code for them, because you know what? There's some people you just don't want to work with. And if somebody's
Right.
going to come have that attitude, like, that you're working for them and that they're in control of the relationship, you're letting that happen. Once you let that happen, you're not going to want to get up in the morning. You're going to regret looking at your email. You're going to, not turn your phone on until 10 o'clock, scared that what you're going to find when you turn it on. Right. But that's not the way I live. It's your business. You're in control. These are my working hours. This is how I work. I get paid up front. Or, I'm happy to take a 75% deposit or 50% deposit, whatever it is, if that's the norm in your industry. But there's nothing wrong with asking for a full payment up front. Depending on,
Yeah.
obviously, depending on the project, but there's nothing wrong. And you know what? I'm it doesn't work for you. I totally understand it. And it also comes with pricing yourself as well. People are afraid to ask for serious money. Now, I remember when I started coaching myself, I was doing like $50 an hour. And at the time, there was someone else, another from business coach, he was charging $300 an hour. And I was like, that's insane. That's ludicrous. How does he do that? You know? And then as I got stronger and I started charging $300 an hour, and I started getting paid $300 an hour. You know why? Because I'm worth it. Because I've
Right.
been through the experiences, right? I've gone through the blood, sweat, and tears. I have the knowledge. I have this yata d'shmaya that Hashem gives me to know what's good, what doesn't work. And so if you're going to go into a business and start a business that you're going to be spending weeks, months, years of your life, and you're going to be spending tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in building it, well, the $300 or $1,000 you're going to pay me, I could save you on heartache. I could save you money, and it's worth every penny. So you have to understand and know your value. Now, that doesn't mean everybody out there who's charging $50 an hour should now charge $300. You have to build it up, right? And you have to make sure that what you're offering really is saving the person money. But someone, and I'm not talking about necessarily in our world, obviously friends and people in the community. I always try to, reserve 10% of my time to help people out that are real, that can really use advice. And I don't even do paid coaching anymore. I just don't have the time for it. But I still like to help people. But if you don't feel that you're bringing the value to what you're charging, then up your game, right? Then learn more, do more, value yourself, and value realistically. You don't want to charge $500 an hour if you're not really worth that. But if you're Yaakov, if you're increasing somebody's sales by 50%, you can charge for that because you're worth it, right? You're bringing dollar value to the relationship, and so you're worth every penny. And that's what people have to understand. And you know what? And if people come to you and they can't afford your fee, listen, you have a family to run. You have to pay your bills, and everyone else has to pay their bills. And it's great to. And you know what? Here's somebody I'm helping get started. Here's another coach. He charges a little bit less, and I'm sure he'll do a great job with you, right? If you're a top of the line surgeon, right, the guy off the street is not walking in and covering his $150,000 fee. That doesn't mean there aren't other surgeons out there, right? Yeah, you have to find a good surgeon based on what you can afford. But if you want the very best, you got to pay for that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because even when I speak to my own clients in terms of their pricing, even within, service providers, just like graphic designers as an example, or within branding, like some of these people are charging, $100, $150 an hour. And all of a sudden I'm like, there are people in your space that I have helped to start charging $250 an hour. And they're like, what? No, there's no way. I can't be charging that much money. I'm like, that's dependent on you. Are you bringing that value, right? What do you think? Compare yourself and the work you're doing, in terms of the sense of making yourself better, right? Understand what other people are doing, what's out there. Do you think that you are on the same level as this other person, right? If you are, charge for it. If you're not, get there and then charge for it, right? And that's really the idea at the end of the day, in the sense that you're the one who's controlling the joystick of how you play the game. That's really how it breaks down. And I think that this also comes into the idea of firing a client, right? I had a client, not that long ago who, I applauded her in the idea, like, she was coming and like, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing? I didn't do the right thing. But there was a client that, called on the phone and started berating one of her employees. And she terminated the client. She said, there's nothing to talk about. You cannot talk to my staff this way. And that's it. And I said, absolutely. I said, when it comes to you running your business, you, first of all, are in charge. And second of all, you need to protect the people you employ. You need to be the one who's going to stand up for them, because they're not going to necessarily do it because they're afraid they're going to lose the client. It's going to be their fault, right? So as the employer, it's your responsibility to stand up for them and not throw them under the bus, right? And I think that falls right into what we're talking about.
It's funny, I've never stopped taking customer service tickets because, it's very important. Even though I'm the CEO and even though we have other people doing it, I still want to have my finger on the pulse. I want to see what people are talking about. So I remember it was a few years ago already. I was taking a ticket, and there was this guy was a customer, was very rude, very disrespectful. And so I started pushing back on him. He says, I want to speak to your manager. So I'm like, in the chats, I'm like, okay, hold on one second. And I'm like, yes. He's like, what? I'm like, he's asked for the manager. I said, yes. I said, well, I'm here. He says, you're the same guy. I said, yeah, I'm the co-founder and CEO. How can I help you? But I would not let, and it's very important to have your employees' backs. People are they have their lives. Everybody has their pekala and has their challenges and their families and just coping and dealing with life. And there's no time to have a client of yours disrespect somebody that works for you. You must always have their back. And I'm not saying our employees are always right, but in front of the client, they're always right. right?
Agreed.
You want to talk to them afterwards quietly, say, hey, maybe this
Off
I would have done
camera,
a little differently. Off camera, 100%. Front facing, you got your employees back, 100%.
100%. 100%. And it's so important from the culture that we're building as a business, but more so than that, it's just the interpersonal relationships side of it that comes along with really building up that reputation and having those human to human interactions that are everything that we want to be standing for and being of service. Well, your employees are the first people you need to be of service to. Right? It's not necessarily,
Absolutely.
yes, you want to be of service to your clients, of course, but the people you employ are to a certain degree a step closer to you, right? They're the ones
I
that
went
are
into
there making sure that you can even charge.
Yeah, no, I hate it. And I'm so against. I've seen, unfortunately, I've seen it so many times, even today, how employees teach how employers treat their employees. And you know what? The employees don't respond kindly, and they're not enthusiastic about working. I'm talking more here in Israel. Just what I've seen, and they could care less what happens in the business because of how they're treated.
Right.
I know somebody that's been working for a company for 5 years, and they refuse to give them a raise, even though they've been there for 5 years. They refuse to acknowledge them. They refuse to give any type of gift. They just, I pay you, and that's what you get. And there's no hakaret tatov. There's no being thankful or anything outside of the small salary the person makes. And I
Right.
remember I was in another place. I was in a restaurant where the person behind the counter made a mistake, and the boss, the owner, started yelling at her in front of me. And I'm like, "What are you?" And I said, I took her place. I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "This is how you want to run a business." And it's so many times. I just this. I'm sorry, just because this just happened the other day. Literally, I think yesterday. I don't want to go into too many details, but when you have a business, every interaction you have with your clients and the potential people sometimes have the wrong mindset. They think it's about grabbing the money, grabbing the cash,
Right.
right? Between you and me,
Transactional.
I think maybe we have a money back, 30 days money back guarantee. On our monthly plans, it's the month runs out. That's it. If you buy for the year, we have 30 days. 98% of the time, someone asks us even past the 30 days for the refund, we gave it to them because
Right.
I don't want to make money off of somebody that's not happy with my software, right?
100%. We're
That's
always
how I
looking
want
for
to
that
create my
win-win
reputation,
example.
right? So if I'm not earning your money, I don't want it,
Right.
right? And I've seen that, and I just saw it recently with another company that they asked for a deposit on a service they were offering. They didn't say that the deposit was non-refundable. So the next
Mm.
day when I canceled the service, realizing I didn't need it, is okay. Well, we're not giving you back your deposit. And I first of all, I never paid the deposit, so the joke was on them. But I still had the conversation with them, saying, I said, I understand. It was 24 hours. I said you didn't lose anything. I said you really want to make your money by charging somebody for something that you didn't offer them. Well, how else are we going to make sure that they come? I understand. So if I don't need your service, and I realize I made a mistake, I don't need your service. So you're going to penalize me and take my money that didn't cost you anything. You didn't lose anything because
Right.
I realized I said that's a very short term thinking when you want to have a long term business. Because you know what? The
Right.
other people I was going to tell about your service, I'm not telling them now. And the people I did, I'm telling them not to use you. Right.
Right.
And
And
I'm
and that
thinking I
all
would
boils
never
down
use
to
you.
how we build our personal brand and what we stand for as a business.
Exactly, exactly. And we have to realize there are things where the money will come. You treat your clients right, you treat your employees right, like we spoke before. I said the money will come. Obviously, you do your tefillah, you do your stylist, your proper stylist. Hashem will take care of you. So if that's the case, there's no excuse to treating someone poorly, whether it's a
Right.
client or an employee or anyone else. You're never
Yeah.
going to
And
gain from
yeah, and it never pays out. Being of service, and we've spoken about that on the podcast so many times already, but being of service is the way where you are taking the idea of giving versus taking, and you're putting the idea of giving first, you will always get more back in return. Always, every single time. And I
guaranteed.
had this conversation with a client earlier today or yesterday, and it was the same concept that he he said that he had been of service to someone, and it was completely out of really the scope of what they usually do. The minimum wasn't there that they usually put in place, and he did it anyways. And when he finished with the client, he said, first of all, I know that there are a lot of other services we'll be able to use in the future. We're definitely coming back. And by the way, I sent a referral, right? And he made more money than he would have the other way because he was of service. Right now, that doesn't mean that you should break your red lines. They're there for a reason. But every once in a while, when you're truly trying to be of service because someone needs you and you know that you can be there and you know that you're going to do it better than anybody else, be there for them. And you will always see that return every
Yeah.
single time. And I would even say that it's one of the biggest things that will sell your business, right? I mean, it's one of the things that I want to ask you is like, what's the number one tactic that'll sell your business best? I think one of those things, if not, up there in the top 5, is being of service and really honestly trying to just help people as opposed to being transactional all about everything that you're doing. Like, the example of this company is the wrong way of doing it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It is about being helpful, about being useful. And that should be your goal. Your goal should be, I'm offering a service, I'm offering a software, I'm offering a product, whatever it is that you're selling, right? Your goal is not to make money. Your goal is to make the customer happy and provide them with something they need.
Right.
That should be your only focus. Am I providing you with what you need? Whether it's a physical product or a service or a software or anything. If not, well, I don't want to take your money, because if you're
Correct.
not getting the value that I'm selling you, oh, you can't return this and that. It's not worth your relationship. It's not worth your reputation to stick to it and make somebody who's unhappy. You want somebody for the next 6 years saying, I'm never buying from that person again, or not recommending you. The world is a smaller place than we think, right?
Right.
Especially now with social media, right? And you don't know by upsetting somebody. Yeah, you know what? Maybe you'll lose money on that product. Maybe they return it and you lost a $3 restocking fee or whatever it is, right? I said, but if you force the person to keep it, and for the next 6 months or a year, the person's using that product with a groan on his face, he's never buying from you again, and he's never going to recommend you when he hears that someone else is looking for a similar product, right? Or
Right. And
service or
and I
whatever
had
it
this
is.
conversation with someone that just became a client of mine. We were having a conversation, and in general, there's a minimum of time that I work with people in order to make sure they're going to see results and it's going to work out. And he goes, "Well, what happens if after the first month, I want that if after the first month I don't like the way that you teach, that I can have out." I said, "Of course." He said, "And what if after 3 months I feel like I'm just not growing?" I said, "Absolutely." I said, "I'll just tell you that's what I do anyways." I said, I'm looking for win-win situations. If you're not winning,
Right.
I'm going to come to you after 3 months, because that's when we're going to look at it and say, you're not showing up on time to meetings, because that's usually when it happens. You're not doing your homework. You're not putting up, the effort you need to into this. You're not staying accountable. I don't know if coaching's really for you. Like, you've been trying this over the past little bit and it's really not going. Maybe you should look elsewhere. And I've done it time and time again, because we're looking for win-win situations. If you're not
Exactly.
winning, then I don't want you to be a client, because it means that it's not the right fit for
Exactly.
you. Either I'm not the right fit and I'm the problem, or you're just not ready for coaching it. And that's not a bad thing. It just means it's not where you're holding yet. And, I'll be here when you need me. But, I had a client recently that we had started, and all of a sudden we noticed that accountability kept coming up. And I was there and I was saying, look, what are you doing about this, and how are we doing this, and how are we doing the other thing? And at a certain point I said, look, I said, I really enjoy working with you. I said, I'm not, please do not send me money on the first, because as much as I enjoyed learning and working together with you, but do you feel that right now you're able to be accountable for the actions that you need to take to be successful? Because I'm a sales coach, and at the end of the day, we can talk till I'm blue in the face and teach you everything you need to know. If you're not going to do the numbers and you're not going to be accountable to making sure to take the action you have to, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to grow, and you're not going to get anywhere. And
Right.
he
He's
heard
throwing
it.
out his money. He's going to get
He's throwing out
frustrated.
his money.
You're going
And
to get frustrated because you don't want to make money off a guy who's not growing.
I
Yeah.
said, look, today you still love me. Tomorrow, next week, you're going to start hating me. Why? Because you're not seeing any change. And we
Yeah.
stayed together, and in a smaller way. I gave him something, that he could have access to me, ask me questions still, but not in one-on-one coaching. And this way, he was super happy. He started seeing growth in his business, started being accountable because he wanted to be in the sessions. So he started working on himself. And hopefully, after Pesach, Passover, we're going to start up again. But I said, just because you closed the big deal doesn't mean we're starting tomorrow. I said, to the contrary, first get the accountability down, and then we'll talk about starting, because I want you to be super successful. And the only way that's going to happen is when you can be on top of yourself. And that kind of leads to the idea of, when a lot of times people, using the example of coaching, they do it because they want to stay educated. They want to stay ahead of the game. They want to keep learning. And I think that when it comes to entrepreneurship, but just business in general, it's a very smart thing to constantly add to your toolbox, to constantly be learning and staying educated. One, just because it puts you ahead of, some of the people that aren't doing that. So you're outperforming all those people that aren't willing to put in the work to stay current. But I mean, Blockbuster and Netflix is a perfect example of this, right? One of them stayed ahead of the curve and said, oh, people are doing things different. The other one said, oh, no, we're good in our old ways. And all of a sudden they fell apart. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, obviously growth and education and always being on top of your game is an important part of any business. One of my favorite podcasts that it's funny, I both listen to it and fall asleep to it because the guy's got such a soothing tone, and sometimes he has like these 2 hour podcasts. It's like when I want to like take a nap or I want to go to sleep, I'll just play him in the background. At the same time, his stuff is awesome. It's called Founders Podcast, and what he does is he goes through biographies of entrepreneurs, from Rockefeller to all the big business people and business stories, and he reads the books and then he gives like a summary of the story, and he does his research very well and he does it very very professionally. And one of the things he says is that there is millions of dollars to be made by learning from others, right?
Right.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel. The books are out there. Just by reading books, business books, you can learn so much from what others have done, right? We don't
Right.
have to start from scratch. Especially today, there's so many, besides the coaches and the authors and the webinars and the conferences and the speeches, right? There's so much content out there. Obviously, finding the right content is another discussion. But when you find that right content, when you find that right, whether it's video or a book, that you could grow from, I think it's an important part of of growing for your own business, right? And also you can even go into conferences that are focused on your industry, seeing what other people are doing, hearing what other people are speaking about in your industry.
Right.
So many times I've gotten something, from a speaker that I'll end up using later that has become profitable for me, right? It's always being educated and always being on top of your game that allows you, like we spoke about before, to charge the bigger dollars, right? Because if you're going
Yeah.
to be stuck in your knowledge from 10 years ago, do you want to go to a doctor that hasn't looked at a science book or heard a lecture in 10 years? Right?
Right.
You want people that are on top of the game, that know the latest studies, that understand what's working, that's speaking to their colleagues and educating themselves and communicating with others. We'll probably talk a little bit about networking as well. But networking and growing from other people, from other experts. Sales coaches have sales coaches, right? Entrepreneurs have
I've
coaches.
coached.
I go to people for advice all the time. You're never too old to get advice or to ask from other people that have been there and done that,
Right.
right? And especially today, it's easier more than ever, no matter what industry you're in or what company, what business you're in. There's always some sort of group, whether it's on Facebook or LinkedIn or school is the new cool kid in class, right? There's always something out there that you can connect with other people that are in your same industry and learn from each other, help each other, which can save you time and money and allow you to charge more for your services.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. And ultimately, I think that, when it comes to, all these ideas, like you mentioned, networking, staying current is extremely important, and making sure that there's 3 reasons that people are going to buy from you, right? At the end of the day, it boils down to know, like, and trust. If you're not out there communicating and showing people that you're still around, they're going to forget you, and then you don't have them knowing you anymore. Right. It's one of the most important reasons of just being out there, whether it's, like you said, LinkedIn or any of these, social media. Yes, getting into conversations and actually networking with people is, another level up, but at the very least, just reminding people you even exist. Because listen, as important as you are, you're not that important to them. So they're
Right.
going to forget you. And it's one of the things I think that, we as entrepreneurs and business owners forget so often is that, well, of course they know who I am, but they don't. They have their own lives to live. They've got their business that they're running. They have all these things going on in their lives. Do they care about you when they see you and when they, you show up in their feed or in their, their inbox or their WhatsApps? Absolutely. But until that moment, you're not in the forefront of their mind. And that's a constant point in terms of continuously being in front of them. I would also, one of the things that, is always on my mind when it comes to, and this I think boils right into, other than the fact that people should just get Book Like a Boss, but what are some of the strategies that people can have and do to make it easier for customers to move forward with them and to book them without getting frustrated with the process?
So that's a great question. But before we get to that, I just want to touch on what you were just saying, in terms and just put a little bit more gasoline on it in terms of creating a personal brand, in terms of creating content, in terms of keeping your name in front of other people, right? For a freelancer, for a solopreneur, for a business coach, right? You want to be able to create content that continues to give, right? You don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be one of these guys that gives five minutes, but hey, you got to pay for the good stuff. Give the good stuff away.
Right.
Show people that you're an expert. Show people that you're willing to give and you want to help, and that you're sincere in helping them, and the business will come. Right? In Gary Vaynerchuk has been talking about for a number of years now about how every company has to have a media company, has to be a media company. Why? Because if your potential client is not ready to buy from you, you need to keep your brand in front of mind. For
Right.
example, besides, so Book Like a Boss, we have obviously our software Book Like a Boss. We also have a newsletter called bossitude.com. And Bossitude, we send it out every week. We just sent out an issue today. And every week we have tips and strategies on how to grow your freelance business, your service based business, right? Because ultimately that's our core client. But if you're not ready to buy from us now, but at least we want to still help you. So when you are ready to buy, you'll think about Book Like a Boss, right?
Right.
So bossitude.com has its own brand, its own website, has its own social media pages, and we create fresh content. And eventually, I'd like to grow that to a podcast. I'd like to grow that to some videos. I'd like to grow that to events, right? Because having that media company out there, where you're giving content for free and you're helping people talk about you, when they're ready to buy, or someone else, or they hear someone else is looking for what you're offering, you'll be at that front of mind. So
Right.
Gary Vaynerchuk also had a book called was it right, left hook? No.
Left,
Right,
left, jab.
left jab? No. Right
No.
hook. Right. Oh, what is it? Well, you got to look it up. Anyway, but his thing is that give, and then ask. Right. But here you're giving, and it's a soft sell, because when it comes to marketing and branding
Jab,
and
jab,
selling,
jab, right hook.
jab, right hook, right? So when it comes to selling, selling is not just the cold emails or the LinkedIn messages, or it's everything that you're doing. It's comprehensive. It's the content you're creating. It's the LinkedIn messages you're sending. It's the emails you're doing. It's the articles you're writing, the blog posts you're doing, the podcasts you're featured in, right? Everything is that's really, it's marketing, right? So that when it comes time for the sale, that you're there, that you're in front of their mind for when they want to purchase. In terms of you started asking, about Book Like Boss, that was one of the holes in the market that that we saw when we created the company, about 8 years ago, 7 years ago, we launched about 7 years ago, was that I was frustrated that people, as you sort of mentioned before, I had a podcast called The From Entrepreneur, where I interviewed over 50 from entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. I was probably, besides Charlie Harari, I was the only other from podcaster out there that was
I remember
non-Torah
those
based
days.
podcasting. And I spoke at a conference, one of the conferences in New Jersey. It's still on YouTube. You can see the video where I spoke. This is going back about 8 years ago or so, where I spoke about how podcasting was going to become very big in the Jewish community, and that there was a big future in it. And I had one of those podcasts, and and teaching people like how, and then as I started teaching people how to podcast as well. This is before I started Book Like a Boss. But because of the success of the podcast, and then my book that came out, So everybody was reaching out to me all the time and asking me, hey, can I take you out for a cup of coffee? Can I buy you lunch? And I was like, well, I charge my time. Oh, how much do you charge? I said, well, $250 an hour. Like, oh, $250 an hour. What does that include? Can you tell me more? And it was all this back and forth, right? They knew I was in the startup space, and it was a cup of coffee or a lunch. They were willing to do it. But when all of a sudden I was charging real money for it, the brakes were put on. And it was very frustrating that there was, the wasted time going back and forth.
Right.
And I said, I wish there was a way that I could have a one-page website that says, this is who I am. These are the services I offer. Here's the testimonials of what people say about me. Here's the FAQs, the frequently asked questions, because I know already what people are going to be asking. If I give them all the information on one page, and they could see a landing page for my booking services, and then they could decide which service they want, book it, and pay for it all from one page. I said that would be great. And it didn't exist, and so I tried building on a WordPress, and that was a pain in the neck. And I was going to hire an expert for $3,000, but then with one thing got updated. Anyway, to make a long story short, when a friend of mine, Dan Roth, his sister was a masseuse, and he emailed me, Dan Roth from Torah Live, Torah Anytime, TorahLive.com. Shout out to him. You can shout out to Torah Anytime also good guys. So when he messaged me, again, going back 8 years, he said, my sister's a masseuse. She's not technical at all. She's just looking for an easy to use platform where she could go and say, hey, these are the massages I offer. Here's my calendar, book it and pay for it all from one page. Does such a thing exist? And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. I said, wait a second. If I, as a business coach, has this need, and here's a masseuse has this need, I bet there are millions of other people around the world that has the same need to easily be able to sell their service online. And that's when I approached my buddy, my partner, David Dukowitz, and he was a developer, top of the line developer. And I pitched an idea and he loved it. And we started off making it. Now we've helped tens of thousands of people make tens of millions of dollars selling their services online.
Look like a boss was born.
Look like a boss was born. So yes, so and that's the thing when and I teach this, and I'm sure you say it also to people, when you're selling something to somebody, you want to answer all the questions up front, any no that they could possibly have. If you nip that in the bud and give them the reasons and answer those negatives before they can even ask them, right, you're going to get that sale, right? Because you'll know what are the top 5 things people are going to ask. So answer them up front, right? And give them those answers so that they don't have any. Because when someone wants to buy something, all of a sudden there's red flags. Well, what about this? What about this? Get rid of the what about this, right? If you could get rid of that, then all they say, well, this is great. This is exactly what I'm looking for. And that's when they'll book you, pay you, and you'll make money.
Fantastic. I want to end with a deep question that's probably going to take us more than just 2 minutes to answer this one. But one of the things that I think that when it comes to effectively growing a business that come up is, how do I know when to hire and how do I do so effectively? And if you could give us some practical steps for going through that process, I think that would be a tremendous benefit for everyone who's here and who's listening.
Okay, so there's 2 ways. First, or 2 things I should say on this. The first thing is that the most important thing in any business is sales, right? If that's what your forte is, and you hate doing the other stuff, like I hate doing the numbers and the banking and the accounting and the legal stuff. I always have somebody. I have a guy on my team, Donnie, who's with me 5 years in Book Like a Boss. He was with me 5 years in the previous company. He was always my right-hand man that took care of all the stuff I hated to do. Because if I had to get bogged down with things I hate doing, I'm not gonna be able to focus on what I like doing, marketing and sales, right? So if you're the entrepreneur, if you're the person behind the brand, if you're the freelancer, if you're the service provider, right, you got to be focused on sales. So when you see that you're wasting time or you're being bogged down with things you don't enjoy doing, and that's taking away from you growing the company, then you know it's time to hire somebody, right? But just like with a lot of things, I like to try before you buy, right? I'm not just going to interview and then hire somebody. I always have a trial period, whether it's a month or 3 months, with no strings attached. You can say no to me, I could say no to you. And also I've gotten very lucky with using different services. Upwork, I found a very talented designer who's part of our team. Has been with us for about 2.5 years now, and she's phenomenal. And I tried her. She hit it out of the park. And then we hired her full time off of Upwork because we wanted to make sure she was going to stay with us long term. Um, and there was another company out there, was called virtuallatinos.com. It was actually a Jewish guy. He was a client of ours, and he reached out to me once and told me a little bit what he did. And we hired, one of our customer success people through him, and and the guy's been phenomenal for us, right? So, but I would, anything that can save you time to allow you to increase sales, you should definitely. That's when you're ready to start doing it. And I would try before you buy. Start with the lower stuff because who else said? I think Noah Kagan from AppSumo said the same thing, that he would rather than hiring an executive that's used to making $200,000 a year, he'd rather hire somebody for $50,000 a year, train them, build them up, and make them into a superstar,
Right.
right? And then they're going to stick with you longer, and they're going to be committed to the company, committed to you, and you just built somebody up, right? And they don't already have, when you hire somebody that's been an executive already. I made this mistake in the past where I worked with some executives. I was sort of warned against doing it, but I didn't listen because I was so caught up in their MBAs and their executiveness. But it's much better if you could grow somebody with you, teach
Right.
them, lead them, and allow them to sprout and blossom. And then you'll have like a lifelong friend, lifelong. I don't call the people that work for me. I don't call them workers. I don't say they work for me. We're all bosses. I call everybody in my team a boss. It's all about being a boss. It's not about, because I want them to be built up. I want them, and I allow them to make mistakes, and I allow them to make their decisions, even if sometimes I won't agree with it, because I want them to grow, and I
Right.
want them to learn. And so I don't like the whole hierarchy. I'm not the type of guy, there's got to be the boss in the sense of, oh, you work for me, you got to do what I say. That's not what I mean by being a boss. I hate those type of bosses. I can never work for somebody. In the few couple of times I did in a pizza place or whatever else, you know, I could never do that. And so I want to treat people how I want to be treated. And if I don't want someone bossing me around or telling me what to do, my workers, I hope they're not listening to this, but when they ask me for vacation, or let them listen to it. When they ask me they want to take off vacation, I never said no. And I never not pay them. I said, it's paid vacation, you're good. Why? Because
Wow.
I know that if I had to take off for whatever reasons, I don't want to miss out on getting that payments because I got to still pay my bills.
Right.
So I know about my employees. My employees are so dedicated. They're awesome because they know we take care of them.
Right.
And so it's the old, I don't know, is it Pirkei Avos, right? Treat others how you want to be treated,
Yep.
right? It's so true. Just don't think of yourself as a boss in the terms of I'm better than you, because we're not better than anybody. We're all created in the image of God, right? Hashem created all of us, and our success is only comes from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It doesn't come from our own koach. Ain't koach biyadi, right? There's no koach in our hands. We go into our styles to be the best. So treat everybody respectful, help people grow, help them learn, and Bezrat Hashem, you'll be successful as well.
Absolutely fantastic. I want to open the floor if anybody has any questions. And if you don't want to open your mic or open your video, you can definitely put it into the chat. I know that we already have, one or two things that we can focus on, but if anybody else wants to add as we go through that, one of the questions that came in is, what are the best practices for following up with customers? A fantastic
So
question.
yeah, good question. As a matter of fact, we built this into our software, that just like we have reminder emails that go out, we have that you could set up that automatically after an appointment, that whether it's a week, 6 months, a year, you could have 5 automated emails that go out through the system, right? So,
Mm,
for example, if you're a dentist, so you could have it automated after their appointment. 6 months later, they'll get an email automated. You set it and forget it, that says, "Hey, it's time for your 6 month checkup. Here's the calendar. Here's a 10% discount coupon we created for you." And you sort of just set it and forget it. And every 6 months, they'll get that email. Um, and so, I would try to, I don't like, I'd say maybe around the holiday sometimes, but then you're just so flooded with emails and it doesn't seem personal. Right? When
right.
someone's sending you a Rosh Hashanah card and they're just like, that you're just on the bulk email list, it's not personal. Make it personal. Don't just BC somebody if you care about them, you care about the customer. Reach out, make the message personal, make it, and always, this is about like we spoke about before, about keeping yourself in presence of mind, keeping yourself in front of somebody. There's nothing wrong sending out an email saying, hey, 6 months since our last conversation, or since we had I just want to know how things are going. Hope things are going great for you. If you ever want to chat, here's my number, here's my calendar, blah blah blah. Right. So just try to automate the system as much as possible, but don't look automated.
Yeah, it's all about that personal touch at the end of the day. And I spoke about this in one of the podcasts, which is the idea of doing it in a way that's different than everyone else as well, right? So not just, trying to set it up in a manner that's going to not take as much time, but also even using things such as GIFs or memes or different videos that you can put together, or utilize, that'll bring out a point without you ever have to say anything. Because the last thing we want to do, is be like everyone else. Hey, I'm just following up, right? Nobody's gonna look at that email. Nobody wants to respond to that email either. As
Right.
opposed to if they get this, cute little video or a cute little GIF, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, fine. I get the idea. It's the emotion behind what it is that you're trying to say. I'll take a whack at that, and I'll give you a nice response. Another question that came in here was, how do you ask for referrals?
A great question. So, first of all, I think the biggest way that the companies succeed today is by referrals. And if you don't,
Mm-hmm.
you could rely and hope that it goes by word of mouth and people are referring you without you asking for them. But if you don't ask, you won't get.
Right.
Wrong with asking a customer, especially if they're happy, you help them and said, "Hey, by the way, I have room in my schedule for two more to help them also, like I've helped you." Nothing wrong with that. And I would do that on the phone. I would do that. Email's a little bit too impersonable, but you could do that. You could do that as well, or WhatsApp maybe if you have the customer's WhatsApp. I just say, hey, do you have anybody? Maybe you could recommend somebody or something. I have people reaching out to me on LinkedIn asking me to make introductions to them. I'm always happy to make an introduction. It doesn't. There's no skin off my back unless I won't recommend the person unless I actually know if they're good
And
or
you've worked with them,
successful.
right?
But just an introduction, I'm happy to do. Right. So if you don't ask, you don't get. And it is more powerful to get a referral. Your success rate of closing referrals is going to be 10 times higher than anything else you'll do. It may feel a little
Right.
uncomfortable at first, right? But people do it all the time and people are referring anyway. They may as well refer you.
Yeah, one of the ways that I like to do it, it's more from a customer service perspective. And I had actually done a webinar on this, which is the basic idea that when you've worked with someone for a certain amount of time, you can turn to them and, customer service 101, are you happy with how things have gone? Right. At this point, you should hope that you've done a good job. If you haven't, you fix it at this point. But once they've said, yeah, you're good. So then you say, what did you like most about what we did together? Or what did you find most useful about it? And from here, they're now in that mindset of you're good, you're useful. And then from there, it's a simple jump to, who else do you know that could benefit from this thing that we did for you, or that thing or the other thing? And the word who else is a trigger. A lot of people, when they ask for a referral, they say, do you know anybody? Is there anybody you know? You're not really triggering them. So by using the wording of who else along with the, yeah, you're good, yeah, you're useful, will help them, go through that process of being able to be, from a customer service perspective, even, go through and not have it feel as, sleazy or salesy and pushy and going through that process.
Right.
This was absolutely
Just along the
fantastic.
same lines. Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but just along those same lines, same thing with asking for testimonials, right?
Yes.
It's almost as powerful as a referral. Getting referrals are great, but if you don't get the referral, ask for the testimonial. Hey, can I get some feedback? Can I something I can post on my website? Something I can post on
Right.
social media that I could show. With us, similar to what you were saying with Book Like a Boss, when we'll ping a customer, we know when they get bookings. So after they
Right.
get a nice big paid booking, we'll say, hey, are you happy with the service? And when they say yes, we say, hey, do you mind, leaving us a review? Here's a link. And it's an
Right.
automated system that we built into it. Uh, and it works great. So asking for testimonials, if you don't feel comfortable asking for the referrals, or doing both can help you with your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more person put here, about building a relationship with a client before asking. I think that, yeah, that is a very important part of, going through that process, because if they're not, of the opinion that you're really great and you're doing a fantastic job, which is why in the methodology I just gave over in terms of, are you good? Are you useful, within that process? Well, then it's a little weird to just ask them for a referral out of the blue.
Yeah,
So I think that's an
right.
important part of the process. We
100%.
always like to end the live podcast with reminding everyone, take something out of this, one thing at least that you're going to put into implementation, write it down, stay accountable to yourself, allow yourself to grow. Nachum, you had mentioned to me that you wanted to make an offer for all those who hear this particular podcast. I wanted to hand the floor back to you just to, point that out, and then, we'll take it from there.
Sure. So yeah. So I mean, if you're looking to sell service, whether it's calendar based or it's not calendar based, check out Book Like a Boss. That's blab.co, blab.co, or you can put in booklikeaboss.com. They both work. If you're ready, when you're ready to buy, use a coupon code Genius, because obviously you're pretty smart. So use Genius, GENIUS, and you'll save 20% on any plan. And of course, also please subscribe to the Bossitude newsletter, bossitude.com, bossitude.com. And each week you'll get some free, valuable information and links, and maybe even a really bad joke on top to put a smile on your face. So definitely check that out as well, bossitude.com.
Sounds great. We've also put in the chat for all those that are here today, and we'll put it into the description, the notes of the podcast as well. The ebook, Book Like a Boss, Lessons Learned from Millions of Successful Bookings, that Nachum has chosen to share with us today, which is, we're getting that first peek at this. So that's really special. And like I always end off the podcast. In this podcast series, we speak about things that are timely, interesting, that we can add to our skill set toolbox. If you love this, podcast today, you could definitely hit me up for a 30-minute free strategy call to take your sales game to the next level. We do get booked out really quickly, so make sure to grab them while they last. I've put my contact information, my Calendly, as well as my WhatsApp into the chat. And I really appreciate you coming again. Thank you very much, Nachum. And for everyone that's here, thank you for being here today. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And take care and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.